First Bull Run. Shiloh. Second Bull Run. Antietam. Chancellorsville. Vicksburg. And of course, Gettysburg. These storied military turning points of the Civil War have been told and retold countless times, to the point where they are now legendary. However, other aspects of the war are not so familiar to the American people. Just as important to the Union victory as the battles won by Grant and Meade were the shrewd diplomatic decisions made by Secretary of State William Henry Seward and Abraham Lincoln. In December of 1861, Lincoln and Seward won the Union's greatest victory abroad when war with Britain was averted after the Trent Affair. In July of 1861, the Union had suffered its first setback at Bull Run. Morale was low. Instead of the short 3-month conflict that people had been expecting, the Union now faced the prospect of a much longer and more costly war. Professor David Von Tassel on the Battle of Bull Run.
It was a rout. And the Confederate government thought that based on this victory, plus the fact that they were organized now as a nation, had a constitution and officers, and based on the fact that they had cotton, which England depended on, that England would recognize them.
The Confederacy, established in February of 1861, was sending diplomats abroad, stating its war aims and enlisting support. After Bull Run, the Union also realized the necessity of gaining the backing of Britain and France. It too sent letters to the foreign governments. As battles raged within the country, one for foreign support had also begun. For some time, Great Britain had been at odds with the Union. While the British were morally opposed to slavery, the lure of southern cotton, needed to feed the burgeoning textile industry, provided them with a strong incentive to support the Confederacy. In addition, members of the aristocracy, such as the Prime Minister, Lord Palmerston, resented the institution of democracy in America and would have been quite happy to go to war with the Republic. The British also distrusted the new Secretary of State, William Henry Seward. Lord Lyons, British ambassador to Washington, wrote of Seward in January 1861. With regard to Great Britain, I cannot help fearing that he will be a dangerous foreign minister. His view of the relations between the United States and Great Britain is that they are good material to make political capital of. With this distrust between the two nations, the stage was set for conflict. James Murray Mason and John Slidell were two experienced Confederate politicians who were on their way to Britain and France, respectively. After successfully running the Union blockade from Charleston to Havana, the two Confederate diplomats boarded the British mail steamer Trent and departed on November 7, 1861. Meanwhile, Charles D. Wilkes, a world-renowned Antarctic explorer, was, at 62 years old, nearing the end of his naval career. Hoping to win military notoriety, Wilkes assumed control of the San Jacinto with dreams of seeing combat. The San Jacinto was originally positioned off the coast of Africa, but failing to find any Confederate privateers to engage, Wilkes decided to sail to the West Indies. There he hoped to find the infamous Confederate raider, Sumter. Making stops at various islands along the way, he learned that Mason and Slidell were stationed in Havana awaiting transport to Europe. Wilkes then sailed to Havana, where it was public knowledge that the local Consul General of Great Britain had made arrangements for the Confederate commissioners to sail on the mail packet Trent. Although Wilkes' executive officer, Lieutenant D.M. Fairfax, advised him that seizing the Confederates might touch off a war with England, Wilkes decided to carry through his plan. Using precise calculations, Wilkes intercepted the Trent in the 15-mile-wide Bahama Channel at 11:40 a.m. By 1 o'clock, the San Jacinto had fired a warning shot and raised its flag, signaling the Trent to stop. Wilkes sent Lieutenant Fairfax aboard the Trent, with orders to procure Mason, Slidell, and their secretaries. Many of the passengers, including Slidell's daughter, were greatly angered by Fairfax's demands. As her husband prepared to leave the ship, Mrs. Slidell correctly assessed the situation by remarking that Captain Wilkes was playing right into the Confederates' hands. After some squabbling, the captives were brought aboard the San Jacinto along with all of their baggage. The San Jacinto proceeded to take them to Boston in a most congenial manner. Mason and Slidell even signed a statement acknowledging the fact that they had uniformly been treated with great courtesy and attention.
Mason and Slidell initially had been portrayed as individuals with almost superhuman powers, that somehow these two individuals were going to be able to go to Great Britain and somehow convince Great Britain to come into the war on the side of the Confederacy. So the news that they had been seized was greeted with great jubilation.
Reports from New York indicated that the excitement here is great. All hands seem rejoiced. The people are glad to see John Bull taken by the horns. The capture of Mason and Slidell was welcomed by Northerners and became a major rallying point when there were few others to be had. Not only had Captain Wilkes stopped the Confederate diplomats, he had stood up to Britain, who the public perceived as sympathetic to the rebel cause. Congress also congratulated Wilkes and suggested a gold medal be made in his honor. The British were outraged at the incident, claiming that America had violated its rights as a neutral country by not taking the Trent to a maritime prize court. They assumed that Wilkes had acted upon direct orders from Lincoln and Seward, and their national pride was greatly insulted. After the issue had been brewing for several weeks, Lord Lyons received instructions from the British Foreign Minister, Lord Russell, on how to proceed regarding the Trent Affair. His instructions were to give the Americans 1 week to hand over the commissioners, as well as to issue a formal apology. If they did not comply, Lyons was to leave Washington. While Northerners would have been willing to go to war with Britain in order to defend Wilkes's action, this would not have been prudent. The Union would not have been able to fight a war against Britain while sustaining its effort against the rebels in the South, due in large part to the overwhelming strength of the British Navy. The Union blockade of the Confederate ports had been the most successful part of the war for the Union to this point. War with Britain would have quickly ended the blockade, since the Union's navy was no match for Britain's. British reinforcements sent to Canada would have also forced the Union Army to fight a war on two fronts. It seemed, despite these problems, however, that Union public opinion would bring the onset of a second war. The Confederacy was excited by this prospect, and realized that the forcible capture of Mason and Slidell had been worth far more to their efforts to win British support than any negotiating that the two commissioners could have done. The decision was now left up to Seward and Lincoln. They could either choose to defy public opinion and return the men, or follow public opinion into war. Lincoln called several cabinet meetings, where he got varied responses. Some members, such as Secretary of the Navy Gideon Welles, encouraged Lincoln to fight and stand up for national pride. Weeks passed without any action, but the slow communication between Washington and London allowed Lincoln to stall and war fever to die down.
People are not knowing what other people are thinking for about 2 weeks. And this really had an effect, I think, to moderate everything, and it also allows you to see each response without it being impacted by the immediate effect of what's going on in the other country.
Finally, on December 27th, Lincoln and Seward decided to send a letter to Lord Lyons indicating that the Confederates would be returned. Lincoln sensibly realized that he could not possibly fight two wars at once. If Lincoln and Seward had not had the foresight to defy American public opinion by returning Mason and Slidell to the British ministry, the imminent war with Britain would have caused the Confederacy to win the Civil War.